purpose of the hearing this evening is to consider for adoption ordinance number 03-13 entitled An Ordinance of the Township of Robinson, Washington County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 27 of the Township Code by amending the zoning ordinance of Robinson Township to provide for a comprehensive rezoning of the township. In summary, the ordinance's purpose is to comprehensively amend the zoning ordinance of Robinson Township to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of township residents. The ordinance modifies uses in existing zoning districts throughout the township and addresses oil and gas development and noise regulations. At this time, I'm going to have the court reporter swear in anybody that's going to give testimony during the public hearing.
Yes, I'd like to get this one.
Anybody do it all at once? Raise your hand.
Whoever has their hand raised at this moment, do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you.
Next item is we're going to have the exhibits entered into the record by the solicitor.
We have the township manager presented or has a copy of original documents, and the court reporter provided us some of the exhibit numbers. So Mike, if we're going to, do you want to do these all at once, Brian?
Yes.
There are various notices that we're going to mark as exhibits. You can just put the sticker on, Mike, and just identify what you have in front of you. Most of these will be just for advertising and the notices that were undertaken for the hearing this evening. So if you want to identify what's that in front of you, we can mark it. We'll just go in numerical order.
Okay. Number one would be the codification of the ordinances that were passed in the past, back in 1985.
Okay. If you can, next one, if there's space at the bottom, you can put it at the bottom. If not, you can use them at the top.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The second one is the amended ordinance number 1-85, amending chapter 22, which would be the zoning ordinance or the codification of all the ordinances, which was dated in December of 1985.
You can mark that up front.
This is the Code of Ordinances for Robinson Township, dated June 2nd, 1986, revising the ordinances from September 9th, 1985. That is number 3. This is the new zoning ordinance dated 11/7/1983, which would have been the original adoption of the zoning ordinance for Robinson Township. And again, it was dated 1/1983. This is exhibit number 4. It's the comprehensive plan, the public notice that was advertised in the Observer Reporter. This was dated for the 14th day of May 2012, where the public hearing was going to be taking place for the public hearing to consider the adoption of the comprehensive plan, which is in effect at this point in time. This is exhibit number 5. This is resolution number 01-12, which is the resolution of the Board of Supervisors of Robinson Township, Washington County, to adopt an updated comprehensive plan. This is exhibit number 6.
And what these last couple exhibits are, so everybody knows, just really when the process started in 2012.
And the next one is the new amended zoning ordinance provided for the comprehensive rezoning of Robinson Township. This is the new ordinance that's to take effect, or
it's under consideration for this evening.
Correct. And that's number 7. This is a response we received from Imperial Land Corporation in relationship to this action that's taking place this evening. concerning the proposed zoning ordinance in the map. This was addressed to the Board of Supervisors. And this is exhibit number 8. Next exhibit is a copy of the notice we sent to all the surrounding municipalities advising them of the rezoning of the township and encouraging them, the other municipalities, to respond accordingly if in fact they had any responses to the updated zoning manual. We did receive one response from the Township of Findlay, and that's attached to this exhibit as well, and that's marked as exhibit number 9. Exhibit number 10 is a letter from Schneider Attorneys at Law addressed to the Board of Supervisors in relationship to this amended zoning ordinance. And this is in reference to on behalf of the food farm, I believe.
Excuse me, can you please speak up so we can all hear?
Certainly try. This will be exhibit number 10. Another response letter we received to the Board of Supervisors is from Bonnie Moore in relationship to the impending zoning amendment as well. And this is exhibit number 11. Exhibit number 12 will be the public notices that we posted throughout the township. There were 3 postings. In conjunction with that, we have a list of all the locations and photographs of the locations where we did the posting. There was 40 locations that we posted. And these would be number 12. Next exhibit would be the advertisements that we did the publications through the Observer Reporter. Did you need each one, or can this be done?
You can mark them all, reference each one, but mark them all collectively as one
Okay.
number.
This would be exhibit number 13. Observer Reporter did these notifications or legal notices on 11/8. And again, these were all for the notification that the township was doing the rezoning or amending the zoning of the township in conjunction with this amended ordinance, as well as the advertisement of this hearing this evening. And those were advertised on 11/1/13 and 11/8/13. And that's all the exhibits I have at this point in time.
Excuse me, Mr. Behrens, I have a letter on behalf of Drainage Resources.
We do have it up there, let's go ahead and make that. Was that hand delivered today,
Yes.
Sean?
Just handed it forward.
The exhibit number 14. The letter dated to the Board of Supervisors dated this date, represented by Range Resources, concerning the amended zoning ordinance that's at hand at this point in time as well, and that's exhibit number 14. That is all I have at this time.
Mr. Chairman, with all these entered into evidence, would you like your planning director to discuss one at a time each ordinance?
I think so, yeah.
And does the board have any objection? I know we have separate ordinances to consider. Do you want to undertake separate hearings for each one?
That was the way we advertised it.
Okay, so I'm not sure if we had one before the other or if it matters. Mike?
We are currently considering the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
The advertisement of the zoning ordinance.
So Rich, is that ready to address that? Okay. Mr. Chairman, then we're going to go ahead and have township planning.
Okay, this is Mr. Grossman. The township hired him as a professional planner to do our comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. So I let him explain the process that we've gone through over the last few years.
Brian mentioned, my name is Richard Grossman. I'm a professional planner. I have an office in Slippery Rock. I work with municipalities on an on-call basis whenever they need assistance. And I was contacted first by Robinson Township in the end of 2009. And most of you, I assume, are long-term township residents. And you remember back in 2009, what was happening in the township was the Turnpike Commission was completing planning for the Southern Beltway. And at that time, the Township Supervisors and Planning Commission were concerned about how the completion of that new highway could change growth and development patterns. And right about the time the Turnpike Commission was completing its initial plan, the township applied for grant assistance from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. And in 2010, a grant was awarded by the PA Department of Community and Economic Development that would pay for services of professional planning consultant. The township chose me to do that, to prepare an update to the township comprehensive plan and then an update to the township zoning ordinance that would implement that. In Pennsylvania, there's actually a state municipalities planning code, which is prepared by the legislature to guide how communities undertake planning for the future. And most communities prepare, well, about roughly 3/4 of Pennsylvania townships have a comprehensive plan. About half of Pennsylvania townships have a zoning ordinance. Robinson Township has had a zoning ordinance in one form or another since 1983. And the real change that I was asked to look at was how the Southern Beltway might change the way growth and development has happened in your township. And historically, you're McDonald and Midway, and what has slowly happened in the township is growth's kind of crept slowly out of McDonald. Well, if you look back at the maps on the wall, the map to the furthest left shows how the township is currently zoned. And if you look at the bottom of that map, and some of you may have difficulty seeing it, most of the orange, the residential zoning, is down at the bottom near McDonald. The potential now is with the Southern Beltway coming through, it's actually going to bisect the township. You have a long, narrow township, and it's almost going to cut it in half. You're going to end up with 3 interchanges. The last I heard, and maybe you guys have better information than me, but the last I heard was they're looking, the property acquisition is complete. They're looking at groundbreaking maybe 2015. Is that what you guys are hearing? And completion in 2020. So that's really only about 7 years away. But what's going to happen is all of a sudden, an area that's been away from major highway access is going to be on a pretty significant beltway connecting 79 South with Pittsburgh Airport. And those interchanges are going to become focal points for development. So working with the Planning Commission, I spent almost 2 years looking during monthly meetings, because they're a citizen board, they volunteer, looking at how the township grew in the past, how it might change, spending a lot of time looking at capacity of the land. The township has areas where soil won't permit intensive development without damaging well water, which is, the soils aren't very well suited to on-lot septic in some areas. Some of the soils in the township were previously mined, and they're kind of just a mix. You never know when you move mine cover what might be underneath. So and some areas have constraints of floodplain or slopes. So we looked at those, mapped them, we looked at where the interchanges were going to be, and developed a new comprehensive plan. And really the biggest single change of anything to the comprehensive plan was the development of a new interchange business district. And that establishes the potential for new highway business districts along those new interchanges. And the proposed zoning ordinance is the one that's the furthest to the right. And you can see that blue line is the new interchange district, and it's area that was previously mostly zoned residential or agricultural. And hopefully those are areas where business development could occur near interchanges that wouldn't create a lot of impact on small homeowners. And that plan really was a basis of developing the new zoning ordinance. Township currently has a zoning ordinance with 7 zoning districts. We ended up with 8 with the new interchange zoning district. And the other thing we did in looking at the zoning ordinance is that the township's original zoning ordinance was from 1983. There was an amendment to the ordinance in 2004, so it was about 6 years old. But there had been a lot of things change under the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code in between your 2004 zoning ordinance and 2011 and 12 when we began to work on the zoning ordinance. Some of them were small things. One of the things the state legislature did a few years ago was they mandated that if a business has no impact on the community, it has to be allowed under a zoning ordinance as an accessory use. And they created a new zoning category called no impact home-based businesses. So that was just a small thing that had to be amended. We had to create one new zoning district. We took a careful look at lot sizes. One of the things that the Planning Commission was perpetually concerned about and took a lot of time to carefully study is, can the township, how much residential development can the township bear? And I've been working as a planner in Pennsylvania for about 25 years. One of the things I've learned almost consistently is if you get too much residential development too quickly, it begins to impact the ability of the community to provide public services at a fair price. And that's what's happened to some of the suburban Allegheny County communities to the north of you. So the Planning Commission was aware of that, and they were really concerned about that. So to the extent possible, they still allowed for residential growth, but they kind of shifted it more over to non-residential growth. The hope would be that as those interchange develop, they develop for business parks or they develop for some type of commercial tax base, because that allows then the township to keep kind of a favorable tax base to services ratio. It also means less impact upon you folks in terms of some of the changes that residential development can bring. And that doesn't mean that making it hard to build a house, but the township took a careful look at the way the zoning ordinance would treat large-scale residential development. I live in the Slippery Rock area, and I actually live on the farm where my family's lived since 1876. And we get folks moving up my way from Pittsburgh, and sometimes there's clashes, like when my neighbors spread manure near a housing development, they get people complaining and stuff. So we tried to take a careful look at agricultural conservation standards. There's still some agriculture in this community. It's a good thing, should be protected. So tried to look at how land's been used in the past and look at how we can protect the good things about this township but plan for the change that's inevitable. I don't pretend to know the Turnpike Commission. They say they're going to start building in 2015. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if they do, it'll be the single largest change to land use patterns in your township's entire history. It's going to change Robinson Township from being a fairly inconvenient place to get in and out of, becoming a very convenient place to get in and out of. So the Planning Commission really tried to take a careful look at how do you manage that growth that's coming in without creating undue impacts on citizens. When they completed their look at the comprehensive plan, Board of Supervisors looked at changes to the zoning ordinance that would implement that comprehensive plan. And that's why we're where we are here tonight after something that really started in late 2009. I'll be here for a while. If anybody has questions or comments about my role in this, I'm glad to answer. I don't know if we're going to do comments yet or whether...
I think unless, does the board have any questions, Mr. Grossman? I know we have the documents to be prepared.
Is there anything from the board?
No.
Okay, if not, we'll go to public comments, and I just ask that when you raise your hand, I'll call on you, state your name and address for the record, please.
Greg Kolicki, 96462 North Pike. According to section 101, community development goals and objectives of the new zoning ordinance being proposed, the community development goals and objectives narrative is taken directly from the adopted Robinson Township comprehensive plan, like you mentioned. As such, these goals and objectives outlined in the plan are intended to act like guideposts, it seems like you were saying, when used to create documents like the zoning ordinance being proposed. In light of this, though, what level of community participation did the board seek in order to first identify what the community development goals and objectives should be in the township? And secondly, what process was used to determine how best to include those recommendations into the new zoning ordinance? For example, were there any charrettes, brainstorming sessions that were held with local residents, property owners, key stakeholders? Did they work with the board to create community development goals and objectives? And if so, if this wasn't done, why wasn't it? My family's owned the property that surrounds the Babington interchange for 75 years, and when you look at proposing a new use for something like that, you think maybe you'd be included in some way. And seeing that, and I respect your background in planning. I have a master's from the University of Maryland's Architecture and Planning School as well. And it just seems there's lack of community outreach and input in this. It's not substantial enough to meet the needs of how these people in the room think that the township should be guided. And no offense to you, but I think there should be, more than just you guiding the township.
Well, let me address that. I talked to quite a few of the large landowners over the last 4 or 5 years.
Stand up so we can hear you, please.
I'll stay seated and speak loudly for you, sir. I've spoken to quite a few of the large landowners in this township over the last 4 or 5 years. I've spoken to a lot of residents. The planning commission has advertised extensively for the comprehensive plan, and nobody showed any interest.
Well, you're my neighbor, Brian, and I was just wondering, if somebody could get a hold of me. There's a lot of people on my phone if you didn't.
Well, I've talked to you in the last 2 years about.
You said you were going to get
You have
One at a time.
You have ideas, but that goes through the planning commission. The planning commission's worked on that comprehensive plan for years.
But the intent and the goals and objectives of the community should be defined by that community.
Well, how do you get 2,000 people into a room?
You asked them first if
That's
they
why
want to attend.
you have a planning commission, and people are free to come to those meetings and express their opinion. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. I've met with property owners. I've shown them maps. I've said, we want your input.
None of the Durants are informed. We're a large shareholder up in our area.
Well,
Well, hold on, since this is a public hearing, she has to take it down stenographically.
Stephen Durant.
It's too hard to, with too many voices at once, that's all. So,
Let me ask you this, what really has changed on this? Well, first of all, the comprehensive plan's been in place for almost 2 years. The comprehensive plan map and the proposed zoning map is exactly the same thing.
You have an agricultural conservation abutted next to interstate business development zone with no transition. Looking at people like various people in planning, they'd say some kind of transition between conservation and an intense commercial use would somehow need to be needed there. If you look at the top of my property, on the 90 acres that sits north of the interchange, there's a strip that's conservation. So you have abutting conservation, business interchange, no transition. That doesn't really make sense on a lot of planning levels. There should be a nice gradual transition to that.
And how would you accomplish that? How would you accomplish that, given the shape of the township, the interchanges, and where we already have existing development, and the turnpike coming through?
Well, I think my first way to do that would be to solicit more input, so we can all come together to understand that, or at least have the people who really are interested in being part of that process, like me, like several other people in this room, be included. I mean, there's even some conflicts I've seen too, like, you have like, the way that the planned residential development, like, that's, the PRD, some issues with that as well, is not maybe even being able to do that on a now it's conservation instead of being, residential agricultural as it was before. And you're looking at the interchange business development zone, and basically trying to say, hey, we'd really like you to do a business park here or something. When there's tons of business parks in close proximity, and I don't think you did a market study to look at the oversaturation of the market when you have Star Point that's like 1,200, 1,500 acres of brownfield redevelopment, which is responsible reuse of property from a planning perspective. And then West Point off of, the Finley Connector. So I just don't know if that really meets the market realities of that, changing it from C2 to the interchange business development district. I don't think that was considered.
Well, what would you, I'm curious as to what you think that you would like to see your property zoned as.
I'd like it to be the same. I'd like to keep it C2.
I didn't recall it being C2. Is it C2? What's that map behind I thought most of it was RA.
No.
It's C2?
Yeah, if you look at our property, it's divided when the highway came through. When the state of Pennsylvania took our land with the highway through, it divided into 3 separate parcels. And, there is a 6.29 acre parcel that sits between Andy's Candies and the Bagton interchange there. We have 90-something acres that's north of US Route 22, and then 11.34 acres that sits south of US Route 22 there. And the 6-acre parcel and the 11-acre parcel were zoned C2, and the 90-acre parcel north of that was zoned residential agricultural. So it's interesting that maybe that wasn't considered.
Okay, so the vast majority of the property right now is residential agriculture.
Yeah,
Did you want that to go to C2? That's what I'm asking.
potentially at some point, if it makes sense in the market, that has to be discovered. You just don't go spending, when you don't have water and sewage at your property, you just don't spend $30,000 to do market studies. You don't, things have to be done in the right time. It's not just location. It's timing.
Let me ask the planner, what's the difference between the commercial and the interchange business development? There's really not much there.
Interchange business provides for a few more light industrial opportunities. Community, the C2 is more of a community business, commercial, traditional commercial.
Traditional commercial, that sounds a little bit better, than a business park that might not even work there.
There are commercial, the interchange business allows commercial uses as well.
Yeah, but it's limited, and the size of the building envelope, it seems, would be changed, and how the property could be subdivided, to meet the realities of the market. Planning, also has to be practical, and in a lot of ways, I just think maybe keeping it C2, like looking at some smart growth strategies for trying to create like a hub of business off that interchange and linking it well to the residential there to provide different uses, maybe even small grocery store or something that would benefit the residents, or some other kind of thing that wouldn't be just totally grounded in a business park. Do we need another business park? I'd have to do a study, get that done to see if that would actually be feasible for this property. At this time, it's not, you wouldn't do that.
So let me ask you this, since I think we're on the same idea, you wanted it non-residential.
I'm just very comfortable with how it is now. I think it provides flexibility.
Well, there's 2 points that I've made. Number one is you can continue to use that property as it's always been used, no matter what the zoning change is. That doesn't affect anybody in the township, no matter what their zoning was changed to. If they're in the interchange business development now, and they have a home, a business there, that just continues. And that can continue forever.
But we're looking going forward.
But going forward, if you decide in the future that you would prefer to see that commercial, there's no reason you can't come back in, request from the supervisors to have the planning commission look at that. We've got letters, one from Findlay Township, that is requesting that we expand the interchange business development in the northern portion of the township between Washington Road and over near the turnpike. They want an expansion of that area.
Well, I mean, you know, you're saying I can come back and do this and that. Well, why even do it now? What's the rush?
The rush is that for years,
How about we have some more meetings and get more input into this before you go past a whole zoning ordinance?
let me tell you the problem with that. This has been a 5-year process. This is not something that you do and somebody comes in and says, let's start over, because it never gets done. The turnpike's coming through the township.
Has it been funded?
I believe it is funded, and I believe they're buying properties. I believe they bought all the properties. We've had meetings with the Turnpike Commission. They're coming through, and we have to do something. And you've got major property owners in this township that own more than 2,000 acres that have developed property in Findlay Township. But quite frankly, they can't do anything in Robinson. You can't do anything when you have residential agriculture running along a turnpike. And for the tax base of this township, if you want to move forward in the future, you have got to have your zoning.
But I was told by, I think I remember this board a couple of years ago, that I could do a line switch if I wanted to, you know, do the C2 anyway, so why not leave it now so it's flexible enough?
Well, let me tell
Which,
you,
and having residential potentially, you know, in planned residential development off of that, that could feed the commercial use.
I don't object to it, I understand what you're saying.
This is just, I guess, a manner of tension.
I don't object to that. But here's the problem. You've got a comprehensive plan that's done. It's done. And I don't object to somebody saying that I may want to do a planned residential development on your property at some point in the future. That's a much simpler process than saying, let's go back and start all over again on the zoning, because we're going to have to go back and review the comprehensive plan.
Well, I mean,
That's the
like, we
problem.
could slow this down enough.
It's 5 years.
What's some,
5 years.
I did a conceptual master plan for that property that I'd love to show you.
There's no reason you can't do that in the future, what I'm saying. The problem with people wanting to do residential development, it always ends up the same way. The infrastructure costs more than the development. The property costs more to develop than what the homes would cost, what the plans cost. So people will come in, and we have a problem on the map right now that we'll talk about a little later, where somebody subdivided property where the turnpike's coming through for a housing plan years ago, and nothing was ever done. So the interchange business development gives you more options. If you decide in a few years you want to do a planned residential development, it's not a problem to come back and do that, Grant, but the infrastructure has to be here to do it.
The infrastructure.
The infrastructure,
I-
sewage, water.
Yes, definitely, I totally would agree, but I think C2 is more, it's just an opinion, Brian, I think C2 is a little bit more flexible as far as meeting some things, maybe on the retail level too, and really I just don't see the rush to put that in there. Why don't you,
I can't explain it any other way than 5 years is not a rush.
okay, well, I respect your opinion because, you know, I have one too, and that's just, I guess, for,
And I'm saying on the record that people that want to in the future, I don't see any issue whatsoever with them coming back and saying, we want to do a planned residential development, fine. I think that might even be a nice place for a planned residential. But an opportunity might present itself to you to do some sort of a mixed use.
then why not do it, why not come back and present, you know, trying to get, you know, why can't you keep C2 in there as well? And then, you know, use the business, interchange business development district.
On the northern side?
Yeah, keep that and, if, you know, maybe put that separately into it. I don't know, I think it works a lot better for me and what I intended, and,
Well, Mr. Coble, if you yield,
yeah.
I think you made your point. You're against it.
Go ahead.
Good, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Mark Kramer, 238 Robinson Church Road. I was on the board when we did the official zoning map. My wife was on the planning commission, and there's several people here. We did take in, and we worked with, I believe, Jeff Pierce, and we worked with the turnpike in mind, and we knew where all three intersections were going. So this zoning change, I don't believe, has anything to do with the turnpike. And I kind of wonder, if you came here down the down the Finley Connector, and you made that area around the Finley Connector interchange with 22 commercial, interchange commercial, how do you get off that interchange? You can't get off. It's a closed interchange. So why would you make it commercial? The only way you can get off that limited access highway is either the Babington exit or the McDonald exit. So it makes no sense at all to make that commercial.
Nate, what area are you talking about? Commercial?
You drive by it every day.
The interchange between the Finley Connector and Route 22. You changed that to interchange commercial. How can you get off that road to go to a business?
I think Ridge Road eventually is gonna be the access.
You can't.
Ridge Road will eventually be that access.
Ridge Road Ridge Road has an interchange.
Do you see
Up
what's,
at West Point.
when you drive up Ridge Road, do you see what's built up there?
Yeah, at that
And that-
interchange in Finley Township.
And that is what developers want to build in Robinson Township.
You cannot get off the limited access highway at the interchange between the Finley Connector and Route 22. Now, why don't we go on with why we're here? We're changing this zoning because the gas drilling has nothing to do with that turnpike, because we've already planned for that turnpike on the official zoning map. So let's move on and get to the point why these people are here. Amen.
Mrs. Kramer? Mrs. Kramer?
Hi, my name is Judy Kramer. I live on Robinson Church Road. And I would like to ask the gentleman, if you change my property from agriculture, which it is right now, to business, can the oil and can the gas well industry fulfill my contract, my lease with them, or will I be restricted? Will they not be allowed to drill under my property? Because I already have a signed lease. And if you change me to business and say I cannot develop that, you are taking away my rights as a property owner.
Who's our coverage?
And furthermore, I want to say this, sir. Whenever Robin Hill came to us with 17 gas wells that they were drilling and under Atlas Drilling, we, the Planning Commission, I personally talked with the Secretary of the DEP in a three-way conversation with the gentleman who was head of the Department of Oil and Gas Drilling. And he gave me a list of the most comprehensive regulations allowed by law. I brought those to the Planning Commission, and we extended that to meet our township. It is my belief that if we are not allowed to develop our properties as we wish, that this board is not looking out to protect us. They are looking out to punish us for our vote.